Hey, my name is Andrew Davis, and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture. And yes, I am scandalous like an Ashley. And before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by Pocket Jack Comics, which they have a Kickstarter going on right now, ends in 6 days. It's a limited 100 print run swimsuit edition. It's pretty naughty, I would say, it is cool. And obviously, I love Preston. So if you're into that stuff and you're like, sexy books and limited edition books, go check out that campaign. But enough about that, because I have with me comic creator, writer, action figure producer, Tom Hutchison. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. Somebody actually just bought toys last night on the campaign. So so that's good. Those that don't know, there she is right there. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, full 6-inch figure, 30 points of articulation. I don't know if I have a boxed one. Yeah, I do. It's got a whole box, just like you'd see with Lady Death and the She ones that Billy Tucci just put out. It's all the same company. It's all the same scale. So now you can have Critter fight your favorite other super bad girls on your shelf as well. So those are available on the campaign as well as all the new comics.
Yeah, so let's actually talk a little bit about all of this. And I think the place to start is Critter has been around for, I think, a little over 10 years. I want to say.
Yeah, she and Penny for Your Soul were the beginnings of Big Dog Inc. in 2010. So this is now, we're rolling into now year 14 for Big Dog Inc., but specifically Critter and Penny as well.
And so obviously I figured we would catch people up because I came into Big Dog Inc. about 5 years ago. So I wasn't there at the beginning. Mm-hmm. People are now starting to discover who you are and discovering Big Dog Inc. And so they might have never, ever heard of Critter. And then people have heard of Critter. They might have fallen off of Critter because comics, people come in and out of it. So what is the basic premise of Critter for those who don't know before we dive into this issue, which is issue, I believe, 22?
22, yeah. So basically, Critter is the first book I ever started to write when I wanted to kind of do comics, and I realized that art wasn't going to be the way to do it. I just fell back into writing a character, and the character that I wrote was Critter, and she was a character that I had created to learn to draw, right? So I got tired of drawing like the X-Men all the time and so on. So I just created her to draw her over and over and over again. Because when you draw, a character has to look like the character, in every panel. So I created her to sort of be, the artistic muse. But over time, I realized that even if I'm kind of okay at what I'm doing with her, now I got to draw cars and trees and horses and all this other crap. And I'm like, I'm not moving fast enough ahead artistically to fall back into the idea of writing a story for her, because as I was drawing her, I was also changing costumes and just doing all kinds of other crap. And so there was a story sort of being told through these character designs that I was making, and I started to figure out, like, okay, what am I going to do? How do I write this story? What is it going to be? And that was where it all began, because I figured if I'm going to write a story, I'm going to start with something that I think I understand, because if I don't know how to write a script for comics, because this would be my first ever script, at least I understand superheroes and I understand comics sort of, osmosis of just reading comics for, 30 years at that point. So I just kind of ran from that. I was like, okay, here's my character. I started to tinker with ideas of who she is and why is she called Critter. I came up with a reason for that, just kept going and going and going in pieces and pieces and pieces. And over time, I found that I had this sort of world built before I'd ever written an issue. And to be honest, I think that that's why the character caught on, because when people read the book, specifically when we got to the issue number 1, the miniseries, not so much the 0, because the 0 is very origin story stuff. But when we got to number 1 and we kind of expanded the origin out a little bit, and we had that extra layer of world building on top of it, I think people realized, like, oh, this isn't just Critter's going to run down the street and punch a bad guy and go home. Like it's not that simple. So on its face, it's very simple. It's a country girl who gets recruited by a team that her mother used to belong to. She moves from Michigan to California to learn to become a superhero, fights the bad guys. That's the surface level of it. But all of the extra stuff, the visitor from the future who says she's destined for some sort of greatness, but won't tell her what or when or how. All of the various bad guys that pop up are the fun punch you in the face moments. But then, the world just keeps building and evolving around her at the same time she's, figuring out her place. So I think that's why it kind of caught people in a fast format.
Let's actually talk about that, because this is one of the things where in 22 issues, Critter has obviously evolved. And there's been
exactly 20. Well, this is 22. There was a 4-issue miniseries plus the 0. So we're actually going to be at 27 technically at this point. Yeah.
So in 27 issues, obviously this character has evolved. And there's nothing wrong with having characters that don't evolve. I'll give a good example of a great book, Cherry Comics by Larry Welts. Great book. Cherry doesn't evolve from issue to issue, but it's not supposed to.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with the character not evolving if that's your book, but with Critter, it had to evolve. And also what I feel is that it's superhero, but it's not superhero Marvel DC superhero. It's not Image superhero. It's kind of that indie superhero that there's real consequences for actions. If a character dies in Critter, they're
dead. They're dead.
They're dead, right?
I'll tell you that they're dead. I'll tell you that they're dead. But it's really, it's not that it's not one or the other. It's to me, it's an amalgamation of all of it, right? Because I grew up with Marvel and DC, like in the 70s and 80s and so on, and then in the 90s, the Image boom and all this kind of stuff. So it really is all of the pieces that I like from all of the elements that all the bubbles for comics that exist. It's sort of like, well, I like that when I was a kid, and I like that when it was the 90s, and I like that, and I like that. And then you kind of mash it all together like a snowball, and you get something else. And so I think, again, that's another key to it, is I think there's nostalgic vibes to it, particularly for people that are my age, that grew up with like 70s and 80s comics. I think there's a touch of that Image sort of, action art, like open art, like not a lot of tiny small panels, like just larger panels, so that things can really breathe. And then it's a mix of science fiction with a little bit of time travel and parallel dimensions, and all the stuff that goes along with that. So it's really that's really what it is it's an amalgam of all of the things that I loved from the superhero stuff that I read over as a kid, turned into a sort of a modern superhero interpretation of the past.
Because what I find interesting, and obviously I've read the first volume that I bought from you, and it's a very cool book. Yeah, I think I got 2 left, right? The one I bought. I think like it's the nice slipcover one, hardcover.
Oh, that's volume 1. That's the first 5. That's the 0-issue origin and the 4-issue miniseries and the Aspen stuff that we did. So yeah, so there's actually 4 more volumes that you don't have.
I'll eventually catch up. Hey, I get paid every 2 weeks. I can't buy anything all at once. Right. But anyway, I digress. One of the things that I liked about the first volume that I read is that it's taking, I guess, what you were saying, but I also view it as, hey, this is a real superhero world. And it's not that, I guess, superhero chompy bit that's out there right now with Marvel and DC, where I feel that there's an element of realness. There's an element of this could actually happen, and it almost brings me into the frame. Like I feel right now with comics in particular, especially Marvel and DC, some of them do it well, but the majority of them don't bring me into the frame. I hate to say it, but like Batman doesn't bring me into the frame of Batman. And it has.
Well, Batman, the problem with Batman is that it's too Gotham City. It's too bubble. It's you have to exist in Gotham City to latch on to all of that stuff, right? So if you don't have that attachment to Gotham City, You know, that's all they ever do is run around Gotham City for the most part. So that's one of the sort of open-ended elements of Critter is that we're all over the place. We start in Michigan, we end up in California. You know, they cross over with Penny for Your Soul and they go to Las Vegas. You know, and then as the story expands and again we build the world, you start to see some of these other characters that exist in other parts of the world. Like when we get to High Tide in Volume 4, where Tide Pool starts to flood the world. We without giving too many spoilers, we have these scenes from around, you know, the United States with all these other superheroes that are trying to do the same thing, like trying to save their little zones from everything that's going on. So Critter can go anywhere and do anything. She's not limited to Los Angeles or San Diego or Michigan or whatever. So plus we have the time travel thing that's happening. So it's a very wide open story.
Yeah, and then obviously, I mean, it's been around 27 issues, obviously 10 plus years at this point. And even what is that like before we dive into this Kickstarter? Because obviously, hopefully, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think successful writers evolve. I don't really care what you're writing,
Sure.
but over time, if you got worse, there's a problem.
Yeah, of course.
Unless you were purposely trying to write a shitty book, and that's a different
Sure.
discussion.
Yeah.
But again and again, jokes aside, obviously your writing style has massively evolved.
Sure.
And nothing against you, but Critter 1 is very different than Critter 20.
Absolutely. 100%.
And even cinematic and what can be done. And also art has changed as well. And that's the other thing too that I think people forget is, and feel free to disagree with me, but I think art has gotten more creative. I think it's gotten more free. I think more styles have come out. I think more hybrid styles have come out. And I think art has gotten better. I just think there's better artists than there were 30 years ago.
Well, it's one of the cool things about Critter and Penny for Your Soul and Oz, because we have these all long form stories where we've done like 6 volumes of all these things. The artists that were with me for a long time, JB Neto on Penny for Your Soul, FICO Osio on Critter, and Allison Borges on Oz, they were with me for so long that you can watch them evolve through the book. Like if you look at Critter Volume 1 and Critter Volume 5, you can watch FICO Osio grow as an artist to the point where he was at Volume 4. And that's when he went over to IDW and started drawing Transformers and G.I. Joe and, you know, all the crazy stuff over there. Spider-Man, he was doing the kid Spider-Man book over there. So FICO grew and grew and grew to the point with us, to the point where he was like, I'm off to another level now. And same with JB Neto. If you look at JB's first Penny for Your Soul volume and the one that he just did with us for Pestilence Volume 4, it's night and day what these guys are doing. And part of that is because of my writing, because my writing's also evolved, changed, modified, gotten better. So I have a better directorial stance when I write a script. I can project what I'm trying to do a lot better. But they've also just flat out gotten better with what they do. So it's one of the things that you sort of cringe a little, because you're like, oh my God, look where we were, 14 years ago. But then you look at where you are and you're like, man, 14 years later, look at what we're doing.
It's funny that you bring that up. So obviously I've been interviewing for 10 years, give or take. And episode 1, the thought process and where I wanted to go was there, but I was stiff as a rock. Mm-hmm. And it was like robotic and there was no personality. And then you fast forward 3 years from there, I'm a little bit better, and then I'm a little bit better. And then finally, it took me almost 500 interviews to find where I need to be bad. And I say that way because it's weird, but like I cringe when I hear my old stuff. So I'm like, who in the hell gave me an opportunity with this? Like,
well, and that's the crazy part about comics, right? Is that so we just did Penny for Your Soul last year. We did a new printing of the original volume, and I knew we were going to do a hardcover and kind of clean it up and do some editorial stuff. And I went back into the original script because we were going to edit the script a little bit because there were errors, grammar errors and stuff that we were going to clean up. But as I was reading the script, I was like, this is terrible. Like, this is fucking terrible. And how did anyone read this and like enjoy it? But again, it comes back to like what I said with Critter, right? I think the world building was there to the point where people were like, this is a little wonky, but I want to see where this goes because there's enough world here that I'm latching on to all of these little pieces of like, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And so that thankfully people liked enough the world building that let us come in and really learn how to make comics, man. Because I mean, at the beginning, I was literally learning how to make comics, like not just learning how to write a script, but how do I find artists? How do I art direct? How do I do anything? How do I get into Diamond? How do I do shipping? How do I do anything? And so, thankfully, the world building that I had created underneath the actual issues, the story, was enough that people were like, yeah, I'm going to give this guy more opportunity. And it's been nothing but go for 14 years now.
Yeah, did you feel, because I'll be very honest, I don't think Stephen King is a good writer. I think he's an amazing storyteller. And it sounds weird when I say that. And I view Neil Gaiman as a great writer, but he's an amazing storyteller. And so there is a point where story does matter, what type of story you're telling. And Penny for Your Soul, the way I feel about it, and I didn't read the original, I read the remaster, is that it is a great, crazy premise. Where you're having this crazy, battle between hell and heaven, collecting souls, and you have somebody who kind of wants to screw it all up and has her own agenda. And she's on both sides and none sides and her own side. And what the hell's going to happen? And I haven't read volume 2, 3, and 4 yet, but I've read volume 1. I'm like, this is really fun. And I just want to see what the hell happens next. It's kind of like Jurassic Park.
That's it.
Let's build a dinosaur park. And what could possibly go wrong here?
Yeah.
And that's fascinating. And so that's how I view Penny for Your Soul, but that's just how I view it. Maybe
that should be everything that I do, right? It should all be, when you're done with the first issue, you should be hopefully saying, well, this is going to be a fun ride. And you want that next issue, like, give me the next one. Let's go. Cause that's always the goal. Is give me more of whatever it is that I just read.
I had a different reaction to Oz, where I'm like, I just want to see what your version of Oz is. Because I know Oz, the book. I've read, things that Fables did something with Oz, DC. Obviously, Zenescope did something with Oz. And everybody's done something with Oz in some fashion or another. And I said, cool, what is Big Dog Inc.'s version of Oz? And what does this look like? So Oz, for me, you didn't have to sell me a crazy story. I just wanted to see it in a more Western type position. And how are you going to do it similar but different? And then where does it evolve from there? So with Oz, you didn't have to convince me. Critter, I just got into Critter late because it's you. And then after interviewing you on a bunch of other stuff, I'm like, okay, let me try Critter because it's the one thing I haven't tried. That's the thing that interests me. There's some other stuff that doesn't interest me. That's a little bit I'm not on the boat yet. Like I can't say the name. It's the weird name that you picked.
Scheherazade.
I just can't get there yet. But like Critter was like, I'm like, I've read everything else that Tom's done, so I should read this next. And for me, it's a little bit different. And because once you get in on one, then you kind of get down the funnel.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that gets talked about all the time is superheroes are really hard to sell because there's just so many superhero things. And I don't disagree with that at all. But I don't think that precludes superhero stuff from being able to be marketed, sold, and be popular and work. And it doesn't necessarily take the Mark Miller version of superheroes, which is the hyper violent anti-hero thing. Like that's all fine, but I don't think that's a requirement. So my goal has always been to create what got coined. It got coined when I was at Aspen, was the Critterverse. And that came from Vince, oh my God. Yeah. Vince Hernandez. It came from him. We were at San Diego Comic-Con, and Vince was talking to me about Critter, and some other things, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I think that the Critterverse has legs to it," and that's kind of where the term was coined, um, and that always stuck with me in my head. What does that mean? What the hell does that even mean? But all it did was like start sparks in my brain, like, oh my god, yes, the Critterverse. This is how we this is how we do this. And then of course, we left Aspen, and we went back into Kickstarter to start doing our books, and Critter got set aside for a little bit because we were doing all these other books. But the advantage was Critter got to percolate for a long time in my brain. So while we were doing other things, I was still over here like, Critterverse, what is this? What is the Critterverse? How do I explain this? How do I use this? How do I maximize this? Because we had already been playing around with all of the parallel versions of Critter. I already knew all of that. I knew how that worked. And that's what this volume 6 is we're finally going to answer what exactly is this multiverse of critters. And that's really exciting to me because I know the answers, and it's not going to be what anybody expects. So when we get to the end of this volume, people will understand how it works and what the ramifications are of it, and what that means for other elements that are all in the Critterverse. So that's going to be super fun. And then that'll take us into volume 7 where it's basically Critter 2.0 at this point. We're at a new set of rules, a new set of understandings, and what does that mean for the characters we go forward. So that's going to be awesome. But the Critterverse is also all of the other characters, right? So it's Rookie, and it's Schoolgirl, and it's Iron Butterfly, and it's Son of a Gun, and it's all the bad guys, and it's all of the other stuff too. And that is where the Critterverse is going to really, really take shape.
So let's actually talk a little bit about this, because there's one thing I want to touch upon before, where I think sometimes things just have to sit on the sideline in life in general for good things to happen sometimes, and just people need to just get ready for it.
Mhm.
And also, I also feel that Big Dog Inc. was building a brand with Penny for Your Soul, obviously Oz, and a bunch of other books.
Mhm.
And that also helps too, because once you have trust, I mean, if you come out with Critter and nobody knows who Big Dog Inc. is, it is a harder sell. But all of a sudden, you have Oz, you have Penny for Your Soul, you have a bunch of other things in play, and then you also have Critter going on as well. It brings trust into it as well. And so even if it was just populating on the side, and then also, I was speaking with Pat Shand, and he was explaining that I think he has a kid's book. And what he said is that kids' books are not easy to fund on Kickstarter, and they sometimes sell really well, and sometimes they don't. But if he does 100,000 on one product of his, and the kids' book does 10,000, that 100,000 can help carry it.
Sure.
And so if Big Dog Inc. is killing it with Oz, that could help cover Critter and help Critter out, while Critter is finding its audience or gaining ground,
Sure.
or just remaining status. And so I think it's very interesting in that regard, because Critter is part of Big Dog Inc. It could be in its own Critterverse, but it is part of a larger company. I think that's something that people don't fully understand sometimes about comics, is that if you have 10 comics, great. Sometimes 2 of them aren't doing what they need to do right now, but if the other 8 are keeping you above water and then some, then it's a collective, I feel. And so
And it was I think Critter obviously, I mean, we've done basically 16,000 in 5 days, so 6 days. So I think Critter benefited from hiatus while the other books were doing what they needed to do. Because even as I did those books and they were on Kickstarter and we were doing all those, even when I was doing them, I would still talk about Critterverse in 2024, Critterverse in 2024, Critterverse in 2024. And so even while they were buying Oz and Penny and whatever else, they were still getting the hints of, this is happening. Get ready, guys. This is happening. This is real. This is happening. And then when we got to 2024, it was like, fuck yeah, it's happening. Kaboom. Look at what we're doing. And this is just the start of what we're doing throughout the whole year, because the whole year is going to be primarily Critterverse stuff. That'll lead us right into 2025, which will be our 15-year anniversary for the company, where we have all kinds of other plans there. So I think the hiatus helped, both in just sort of being able to build a little hype around it, and it gave me time to really structure the story the way that it needed to be structured, so that we could knock it out what we needed in this volume, and then launch 2.0 in a couple years.
Did you also feel, because for those who don't know, I took about 7, 8 weeks off for a few reasons. I needed just time off away from interviewing, because it is very complicated when you're going, 11 months at a time. I would like to breathe and watch some football and watch some anime and read some comic books. But it also, in that time, I was doing social media, cutting up, editing content, scheduling a lot of interviews for the year, and setting up my 2024. And I don't know how you feel, but while you were doing these other books, did you also, and I think you kind of mentioned a little bit, but did you feel like you actually had time to think and say, what is the battle plan for Critter?
Yeah.
Because I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
sometimes creators don't have a battle plan, and then they're saying, I want to do issues 1, 2, and 3, and 4. But I feel at this point, Kickstarter and indie comics and comics in general, you need to go in there with an understanding of, we're going to do this here, this here, this here, this here, and I need time to build certain things out and also to be on time. If you want to do 4 or 5 Kickstarters with Critter this year, you can't just say January 1st, we're going to start it. You kind of have to plan that 6, maybe even 8 months ahead, I feel.
Oh yeah, we were planning it. We were planning it years ago. We're already planned 2020. I'm planned through all the way through 2026. I know what the next 2 years of Big Dog Inc. is. So yeah, absolutely. And in having the hiatus, I got to tinker with the stories. So even Oz was out for a while. We did. So when I was with Aspen, Penny for Your Soul took a side route, because they didn't want to publish Penny because it's a more of adult book. So that one kind of got pushed to the side. So while we were doing our Aspen stuff, I got to kind of figure out Penny for Your Soul in the back of my head. So, because I knew at some point we'd come back to it one way or another. So when we finally got to volume 4 on Kickstarter, man, it was ready. Like Pestilence was ready, and it was a great 7-issue series. And then as I was doing that, we were looking at the 10-year anniversary for Oz coming up. And then as we did Oz, it was Ursa Minor. So all of those books were on mini hiatus points. And that gave me time to really focus on each of those stories individually, for that to really make those arcs powerful. And I think that if you read all of that stuff, if you read all these things, from Penny to Oz to Ursa to Critter, I think you're going to see 4 really, really good, like 5-issue arcs for these individual books, because they all had that little extra bit of time that I could put into them, rather than trying to scramble and put out a book every single month, which is what we used to do. We used to put out anywhere from 3 to 5 issues of different titles a month when we were first rolling, and that is brutal schedule, especially when there's only one person writing shit. So Kickstarter, slows down the process, but it also allows for more process, I think. And that's really the key to it. You still don't want to be like lagging around. Like, you don't want to be like, well, I'll do 1 or maybe 2 a year. Like, you're never going to accomplish anything. You've got to be doing at least quarterly books on Kickstarter every 3 months. That gets you 4 issues out a year. You'll be fine. If you're slower than that, you're going to have a hard time building an audience, because people are just going to be waiting too long between the issues, and they're going to forget that you even exist.
Yeah, no. Also, I mean, the way I feel is that if you do a quarterly book, you have, as that campaign ends, to get me your book in 6 to 7 months, the latest. And I understand that maybe everybody has a different opinion on that, but after 7 months, I lose interest in your product, because we are now talking about 8 to 9 months of me getting it from when I backed it, and I don't remember backing it. And if I'm not, if oh no, seriously, Critter 22. So if that book's not in my hand by June or July, I'm gonna be like, well, what did Tom send me? What the fuck's this shit? Like what's Critter? Like, I'm gonna know what Critter is, but like I'm gonna be like, I backed this January 6th. Like, I don't remember backing that January 6th. And so my point that is, like, you gotta get me your product fast. And that's the other thing too, that I think people, if you're an active person and you're writing it, it's probably gonna nag you if you're doing quarterly books that your backers don't have their book Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it would nag me. It nags me. Somebody just bought something today on eBay from me. I'm at my job. It's nagging me that I'm going to get it out tomorrow to them because the fact that I'm 8 hours late to getting them their product in the mail bothers me. And so that's just how I feel. But maybe I'm a little
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, Critter is done. The art is all done. The colors are underway. We've posted up the first three. Headwind just sent me a couple more that he's finishing. So as he finishes more, we're going to post up more so people can see it happening, which will be cool. But our plan is, barring acts of God that get in the way, we're planning to have the book shipping in April, which will be when the next campaign launches.
Which really means
So
May, but that's okay.
what? Say again?
That really means May, but that's okay.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't though. It just depends. Really, it's going to depend on the printer. As long as the printer can turn and burn, then we should be. We're right where we want to be. Because if we get to the because our thought process is, if we get the print blah, blah, get to print in February, we should have the books by the end of March at the latest. And then as soon as they're here, whoosh, we just start sending them out. So they may not be in the mail upon launch of the campaign, but they'll be landing in your mailbox during the campaign at minimum. That's the goal right now.
Let's actually talk about that too, because one of my biggest pet peeves, and it happens, I would say 20% of the time with me, especially with certain people, is that they launch issue 2, and right as issue 2 ends, I get issue 1, but I don't know if I'm gonna like issue 1, and like that's a problem, and it doesn't happen too often, but every once in a while it
Yeah,
happens.
but you know what? That's no different than buying it at the comic book store. If you have a pull list at the comic book store and you're like, hey, I want this book, I'm going to order, put it on my pull list. They start ordering it for you 3 issues out before the first issue comes in. So it's the same thing. It's a leap of faith. You hope for the best, of course. You never know what you're going to get in any book, even from a big name. There's plenty of big names that I won't read their shit. So it's always a leap of faith. But I think that for the most part, if you are looking at a campaign and you're like, this looks all right, man, then the leap of faith is solely based on the story. And because, you like the art, right? You're looking at it and you're like, that looks cool. Let's just hope now that it reads cool. And again, that's 50-50 still.
I would even throw another thing in there. Let's hope that who you're buying from, if they're new or even if they've been around a little bit, that they can fulfill and deliver. Because
Sure.
I hate to say this, because that's also a crapshoot right now.
It's less of it. Well, here's what I would say for people, because there's people that get upset about Kickstarter and like, well, I didn't get my Kickstarter. I'm like, yeah, you're backing people that are brand new, like they are absolute ground zero of making comics. Whereas if you go over to some, like if you look at you can look on people's profiles, guys, and you can look at how many campaigns they've done. You can see which ones they are. You can click on them and see the old campaigns and stuff. If you see somebody that's out there with like 30 campaigns, right, and they're still active, they're still doing stuff, you're probably going to be okay. They're going to get you a book. If you go in there and there's like one campaign started, 2 campaigns started, you're talking about the real rookies at that point. And that's where you have shit might go sideways. So it's like anything else. It's like kick the tires, man. You're buying a car. Do a little diligence of your own. I know that, like, oh shit, that looks really cool, but it's like, look, this guy's too brand new. I might not get the book.
I'll be honest. I backed somebody brand new, and they screwed the pooch on like 3 campaigns, and they're just in a shithole.
Yeah,
and they were seasoned, and for whatever reason, 3 campaigns went sideways, and maybe they were able to do it and fulfill when things didn't go sideways, but they were seasoned, so it could still happen to anybody.
Of course,
because,
yeah.
But again, I did my due diligence.
But again, what I'm saying, it's not the person. I'm not talking about the person. I'm talking about the actual amount of things And then again, you can go into each one and you can kind of look at comments and updates and stuff, and you'll see like, oh, sorry, we're so late, or sorry, whatever. So you can get a sense of like, I might not get this book. And then just wait, but there's plenty of people out there that have done 10, 20, 30, 100 campaigns. And they always get fulfilled. So with us, I don't even know how many we've done now. It's a lot, but we've fulfilled everything. And right now I'm in the process. Tomorrow, everything goes out for Video Games Day. We finally got those in. So our Video Games Day books are all going out. Everything's packed and ready. I just got to do the labels. And then tomorrow, we're also debuting the art for one of our Critter books that we're going to celebrate. Tomorrow is the 25th anniversary of Britney Spears' first album release. So January 12th, we're putting out a special, what we call Britney Ears. She's basically Critter, our superhero character Critter, as a pop star. So we have a special variant cover for Britney's anniversary, and we'll debut the art tomorrow. You can buy it right now. If you go to the campaign, you'll scroll down, you'll see it. There'll be like a blank cover, right, with the logo on it, and you can pledge for it right now. It's not a problem. We already have people buying it. But we'll actually do the debut of the art tomorrow. It's art by Brian Peterson and Sanju Nivengoon. And I actually just got it turned in. Sanju just turned it in. Looks freaking awesome. So I'm excited to pop that for tomorrow. That'll end week 1 for the campaign tomorrow. And then that'll give us basically 15 days left for the campaign. And we're already basically at 16,000. So it's crazy.
Yeah. So let's actually talk a little bit about this, because obviously you do a bunch of variants.
Mm-hmm.
I got pictures, my favorite part. And hopefully these pictures are in the right order. So this, I believe, is the basic cover. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the 400 print run, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this is kind of, if you just want an entry level in, I think it's the cheapest cover minus
that's our A cover. That's your logo cover. Everything else that we do is virgin editions for the most part. But we always have just the A cover. If you just want to read it, you're good to go. If you didn't get the last issue, number 21, there's a combo pack where you can get 21 and 22 together. So you can just kind of catch up easily. And if you haven't read the series at all, you can get all of it in one shot, or you can just buy it piecemeal, however you want, all the trade paperbacks.
And so that's that. And then we're going to go into the variants. So there's this one right here.
Mm-hmm. Mars Fung. She's a new artist that I found last year. This is her 3rd cover. It is spectacular. Loving it, every bit of it.
And then Bill McKay did this one, and I feel like we're down in Riverdale.
Big Bill McKay, yeah. Big Bill McKay. This is a great one. So this is a costume that when she goes out to Los Angeles and joins a superhero team called Perfection, they give her a new outfit for the team, because that's the person that she's replacing. So there's a character called Josie who was killed in action, and they recruit Critter to become the new Josie, basically. So she's Josie for a little while as she gets moved out she moves from San Diego up to Los Angeles, because they're a very paparazzi styled superhero team.
So they're not scandalous. Just want to make that crystal clear.
No, but they like the cameras. They like the paparazzi. So that's that.
And then we got this one in there as well.
That is Carl Liversidge, and that is what you're going to see now is some of the variations of the parallel dimension alternates, whatever you want to call it. So this is what we call the Cat Girl of Mars, who appeared for the first time in issue number 5.
And then we got this one in there as well.
And this is the Clockwork Kitten. This is the steampunk Critter. That's what this volume is about. Volume 6 is about this version of the character crossing over into the, Critter Alpha's world. We don't know why that happened. We don't know how that happened. We don't know what it means, how it's going to resolve. But her crossing over into the Prime universe, as we'll call it, that will start the problems and the solutions of the Critter multiverse.
Well, I have my theories, and my theory might be slightly off.
Oh, it's off. I guarantee you it's off.
It's all about catnip. That's what I think.
You're not even at the tip of the iceberg.
Whoa. Who doesn't love catnip? I have a cat.
Well,
She loves catnip.
it's
Great.
fun, but the multiverse has no specific connection to Catnip herself. Catnip is part of it, of course.
I'm talking about like the plant. I'm not talking about the character. I'm talking about
sure. Okay.
I thought we were on the same page here. Like, see, I know what it's all about here. Like, this is just terrible. Just terrible. So many things I could say. We're just gonna nod our head and pretend that I know what I'm talking about. But this is the cover I backed, everybody, because I love Britney. I think she's great.
So that is Britney Ears, right? That's the original Britney Ears that we did one a couple of years ago. Mike Crome actually designed her for us, and so that's Crema Art. She does amazing art, and this is her first cover for us. So she did the old school Britney Ears for us. That one we just had originally as part of the original 9.
What is this like? Because obviously I picked up, for those who don't know, I picked up the matching set from Mike Crome from you. And I think that's the first Britney cover you did, I want to say. This is technically the second/third. Brian Peterson is the second/third. I mean, I don't know the correct orders, but it's neither here nor there. And what is that like? Because obviously Britney Spears is an icon. Whether you love Britney Spears, you hate Britney Spears. I grew up in the 90s. You know, I was born in 93, so I grew up throughout 2000. And obviously Britney was big, Backstreet Boys was big, NSYNC was big, Spice Girls were big. So what is that like? Because my generation knows this. I think your generation knows this. My parents know this. And
well, yeah, Britney is Britney's eternal. I mean, if you like pop music, she's eternal. Even for me, I was older when Britney came out, but I had grown up with like Tiffany and Debbie Gibson and Madonna and Paula Abdul and all that kind of stuff from like the 80s and 90s. So for me, when Britney came around, I wasn't really paying attention to it, to be honest. But I owned a comic shop at that point that was in the upper level of a music store. And so they would just play music all day. And so Britney's stuff was always in the rotation. And so that kind of Britney and Christina Aguilera and, all that kind of stuff. So that just kind of, I was like, oh yeah, Britney. All right. This is okay. Even though I was older, I was like, I'm just a pop music fan. So I was like, yeah, Britney, this is cool. So I have Britney's first 3. She's done some stuff since then that I only really like songs rather than the whole album. But, when I'm not exactly sure how it came around that Britney Spears was created. I have no story for Britney Ears. But at some point, somewhere, something triggered in my brain, and I was like, "Oh man, this is like too much fun. We got to do this." And this was back like 5 years ago. So this would have been 20. Yeah, it would have been like 2019. It would have been, maybe that was it. Maybe it was the 20th anniversary of Britney is what triggered Britney Ears. And now here we are 5 years later. It's her 25th, and we're still celebrating her.
The reason why I bring this up is that there are people who collect tributes to music, comic people, in which there are weird collectors there's swimsuit collectors, there's people who only collect certain things, there's people who only collect Mike Crome, there's people who say, cool, I'm interested in pop art and pop culture icons.
Well, that's why you see so many homage covers, because there's people that buy all the homage covers, the Spider-Man 300 and all that kind of stuff. They will buy it no matter what it is.
And then there's people where it's like, I'm going to have this cover and it's a conversation point. So the way I'm going to introduce my girlfriend into comics is I'm probably going to pick stuff that is connected to something else, and it becomes a gateway. So I think it's going to be a soft landing. And something like this, in my opinion, is a soft landing. Maybe not sexually, it's not a soft landing, but it's a soft landing as far as being relatable.
100%.
And so, like, I think it's smart because somebody might not back, or might not be a comic fan, but they might be like, oh, this came across my desk. And
it's one of these things that I fight with, honestly, because I'm not a fan of like the homage cover. I'm not. But I do like deep cut homages. Like if you go deep somewhere and you can surprise me with something cool, I'll give you the nod. But everybody just does the easy stuff. It's like, oh my god, I'm gonna do this Todd McFarlane thing. I'm gonna do this Jim Lee, this X-Men thing. It's like, oh my god, it's just so tired. But like you said, I understand why they're doing it, because people will walk by a table or see a something on their social media feed, like, what? Wait a minute, what was that? That looks familiar to me, and they'll come back to it, and then they'll get the explanation of what it is. So I understand why people do it 100%. We've done it from time to time. But I try to make ours deep cuts, not just the normal.
So I don't think this is an homage, though. Like, I don't.
No, this is not at all.
I view it as a pop culture connection, where if you walk past this and you don't know that's Britney or a Britney Spears reference, I'm sorry, you've been living under a rock. I'm sorry. It sounds mean.
It's a little obscure only because the colors are different, right? Because we turned it into critter colors rather than the black skirt and stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of obscurity to it because we modified her there. So I don't think it's an obvious, oh, that's Britney, but I think it's close enough that people might take a second look at it. Plus, anytime you do music stuff in comics, you're starting to attract a different part of people's brain, right? It's like, oh, there's a comic, but oh, she's singing, or she's got a guitar, or she's, whatever it is. So you trigger another part of the brain in the pop culture world when you have something that isn't just the normal, oh, there's a superhero on the cover. So yeah, I just think it's a fun differential. And I think the one that you guys will see tomorrow is really fun. And I love the one that Mike Crome did so much. I bought the original art. I was like, that is not going home with anybody but me. So yeah,
I love the set. I bought the set from you, and I was thrilled to, and I've been eyeing it for a while because it's a beautiful set, and I know when I think up on Instagram, it's personal. It's a personal book. It's some of my favorite covers you've done at Big Dog Inc. Because I think they're fun. I think it's fun, and I think that it's tasteful. And I don't know how to explain that, where there are covers that are just not tasteful. Like this, to me, is not overly sexual. It's sexual a little bit, but it's playful. It's
sexy. There's the word mean things. It's sexy, right? Fine. We can say it's sexy. It's not sexual. It's not sexualized. Just because you can see skin does not mean anything. It's just a sexy cover. It's based on something that already exists. So yeah, it's just what it is.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Obviously, Brian Peterson did something. I also picked that bad boy up. And so I'm very excited to see what that looks like. I am putting a lot of faith in you, so don't disappoint me.
It's good. It came out really good. It pops right off the page, man.
Let me put this a different way for everybody. I spent $320 with Tom, and Tom's actually the second biggest comic expenditure I'm gonna be making this month. I'm sorry, you lost to somebody. You did beat out Zenoscope this month, though. I do want to give you that. They're in third place right now, so you're in second place.
Okay, well that's Critter, man. Critter is the second best superhero in the universe, so that's exactly fine with me.
I had to make a business decision on buying a certain lot of comics that was a little bit expensive for my business, but I'm going to make a decent amount of money on it. But anyway, you're technically in second place. I'm sorry, Tom. If this ends our friendship, I understand. But I digress. And there's a few more covers. Obviously, there's this one right here, which is fun. I think this is kind of BFFs.
Yep. That is Schoolgirl. That is Critter's sidekick. Yep.
And then I heard Mr. Gunn did a good job.
Absolutely. Iron Butterfly, one of the bad guys. And she is getting her own short story at the end of February. We're going to be doing a little short campaign for her with her own. Like I said, we're expanding the Critterverse. So Iron Butterfly gets her own story at the end of the month.
And then you did this one too, which is kind of the whole team up.
Yep. This is old school, like Marvel team up. DC Comics presents. So we have Critter and Blue Jay. Blue Jay is our sort of unique superhero that doesn't really have a place yet. She has no stories told about her other than she appeared in the camp crossover stuff. We know that she's a social media fiend, but we don't really know anything else about her. She's just been popping up kind of all over the place in random images and random covers. But the Doghouse team up, that's the first of those team up covers that we're going to do. So we'll continue to do those as we go down the line. And all the folks on Patreon are going to get to vote who the next Critter team up is with.
Are they also getting to vote on the Blue Jay action figure, or is that a next?
I was actually thinking about the Blue Jay action figure today. To be honest,
can you explain the joke of that by any chance?
What's the joke?
The joke is that, so you did Critter for those who don't know, and the reason I brought it up is that you did Critter, and then that action figure did over 30,000. And then everybody's like, let's do Blue Jay next. You know, Blue Jay doesn't have a book.
Oh yeah, Blue Jay with no story. Everybody wants Blue Jay. Yeah. Well, what's the funny part is that I figured out a way to do it, that I could actually do it with two figures, because like with Critter we had the two costumes, right? So that made it so that we could have one mold but two costumes. So let me see if I should have it right here. Oh, maybe
I have both action figures. I just didn't want to take them out because I'm in somebody else's office right now, and I don't want to have to bring my stuff back and forth. And
there we go.
I didn't even like wrap them yet. I'm like, really? It's just like they're like in there like cellophane. I'm gonna put that next to like serious.
So here's Blue Jay, one of her covers that we just did for the BD13 anthology. That's her normal. Going to avoid some glare. There we go.
Mood-rific,
so there's,
or is it terrific?
Yeah. So there's the Blue Jay, right? Like her standard blue bird costume or whatever, right? And then, so last year for the BD13 anthology, we do these things called BDI 365, where basically we take special days out of the year, and we've done Princess Day and Alien Abduction Day and just all kinds of stuff.
I have to stop you. You got to stop milking this.
Yeah, I'm going to milk it because no one knows what's going on. And then, so last year there was, apparently it's a real thing. I found out also later that it was created by Chick-fil-A is where it came from, which makes complete sense. Now that I hear about it, I understand why this happened. But there's Cow Appreciation Day, right? And so we did what we called a Moojay variant of Blue Jay's costume right there. And this was wildly popular, like over the top, ridiculously, wildly popular. So as I was talking about earlier in my brain, I don't know why it came up, but I was like, because like you said, people are asking for a Blue Jay figure. You could do a Blue Jay figure. I'm like, yeah, but nobody knows what that is. And I'd have to make like 1,000 of one figure. That's really hard. And then I was like, holy shit, I could make a cow. I could make a Moo Cow Jay figure. And then my head started spiraling. Then I started thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute. Has there ever been a cow-based superhero in the history of superheroes ever? And I did find that I think it was DC Comics. No, it was Marvel. Marvel has a character called Hell Cow. I was not prepared for Hell Cow. That was out there. But it's not like spotted costume. It's like literally like a demon cow thing, you know? So I kept trying to find a superhero that had like cow as their, you know, like Catwoman and stuff like that, right? There's no cow woman or cow dude, or there's none of that. So I was like, Jesus Christ, maybe there's something here if I have this ridiculous cow thing. So, you know, who knows?
I think you could even go further. I mean, you could have it if you could figure out like the accessory. You can maybe get an accessory in there of even having like another version too in like one of them. Oh, I mean, it's endless. There's so many things you could do.
Oh, of course. Well, and we also did, because last year was the Barbie movie, right? So we actually did a variation where, so instead of the blue costume, she was all in pink. So we did a Barbie variant. You know, I mean, it's you can go crazy, but the problem is when you're talking about figures like that, and you have to make 1,000 units. You got to make sure that there's an audience for whatever it is that you're making. And I don't know that there's a Blue Jay audience just yet. There might be a Moo Jay audience just because there's weirdos out there. But I don't know that I'm ready to pull that trigger.
But also, I mean, toys are also very different because you're entering a whole different comic adjacent where it's comic-esque, but it's also toy-based, where the Critter thing was Critter, but it also attracted people who are interested in toys.
100%. I had tons of people that were buying it and they didn't even know what it is. In fact, somebody on Facebook the other day, I posted, I was at one of the groups that I'm in, I posted art for the campaign, and dude posted, he was like, holy shit, I bought these toys. I don't even know what this is. And so I gave him the link, and he was, he went off to the campaign and he got Critter figures. So I was getting that a lot. People were messaging me like, dude, I got this figure and I don't know what it is. How do I get the books?
I'll be honest with you, where I'm not a toy collector, I'm not an action figure collector, but I said I should probably back this because this could be something interesting somewhere down the line. And I'll take $150 risk. And I don't know what they're worth. I don't know if I'm going to flip them. I don't know if they're going to go up in value. I don't know if they're going to be worth like $1,000 a piece at some point, or if I'm going to keep them for myself. But I said there's a good chance that this is a really cool thing that is super limited, and who knows where it's going to go, because toy collecting is a sector I am not an expert in, but I know people go ape shit crazy for it.
Sure. Well, when you consider that we had 2 versions and there's only 500 of each, and half of them are already gone because the Kickstarter people bought them all. We're already low on the totem pole in quantity. They will not be reprinted. It's not something we just go back to print and make more. So we make these 500, and then we come out with another figure later, like we do Joan of Arc or Dorothy Gale or something. Suddenly Big Dog Inc. is in the toy market now. It's not just that we did a toy. It's that, oh my God, we're now in the toy market. So people that are buying Dorothy Gale will be like, holy fuck, what did I miss? And they'll start looking for the Critter figures.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have mine. They're not even out of like the plastic bag they came in, and they're legitimately just on a shelf because I don't know where I want to put them, and I don't know where they'll be safe. And I might never ever take them out of the box because I think they're beautiful and I think they're awesome. And I'm very much a purist, and I'm very careful, and I put them out of reach of my niece, so she can't touch them. They're not her toy; they're mine. But again, I took $150 risk. I definitely prioritized my budget for you. This is our friendship, Tom. It's all based on economic.
Well,
root.
plus you got the Keith Garvey. You can probably flip that Garvey right now for $100.
Yeah, it's trading for like maybe like 75, 100 on a good day, anywhere between there. But even if it covers half the order, it's amazing. I mean, again, if you get a free comic with any stature or anything, if it covers half your order or more, you're in good shape. That's how I view economics. That's what I think at the very least. But again, I'm very pessimistic. I would rather under promise, over deliver.
Sure.
Because then I look like a superhero, right? So if I say, oh, Tom, you're going to do 15,000 and you do 25, and then you say, oh, yeah, we're going to do 15,000 and you do 25, you look really good, right? If you say I'm going to do 25 and you only do 20, you don't look so good anymore, do you?
Yep. You gotta know where you're going to land for sure. I'm pretty good at figuring these things out now. Although the Critter has gone way beyond what I expected. To be perfectly honest, I kind of expected we would land right around here, around 15 or 16 for the entire campaign. That was my assumption.
Would you like me to get you there? Because I could tell people to drop out at any given point.
I mean, it's really crazy. I mean, and it's one of the interesting parts is that, yes, we're selling a lot of variant covers, but we are selling a ton of trade paperback sets, like a ton of those. And that's not a cheap pledge, but people are going like, yeah, give me all the books. And those guys, they're reading it, because that's trade paperbacks. There's no real value in trade paperbacks other than just, cover price. So these guys are coming in like, I want to read this whole damn thing. And they're just like, here's my money. That is spectacular. And I can't wrap my head around that. Because again,
let's actually talk about this, because there's 2 things that pique my interest. Obviously, I'm a variant collector. I picked up more than one because I'm looking, obviously, to invest in books, have books, figure out what I want to do, potentially get stuff signed, get stuff graded, whatever I want to do. That's kind of where I'm at. And I know that these are super limited variants. I think most of them are limited to 100.
100 copies,
and then the hollow foils are further limited. I think the metals are also further limited.
Yep.
And so obviously, but the 100 is, so Brittany Ayers, I think the Brian Peterson's limited to 100.
Mhm.
I think that the other Brittany book is limited, and then most of them are. And then I think also the other one we didn't talk about, which is no longer available, is I think it's Ryan Otterly did a cover for you.
Yeah, Ryan Otley. Well, Ryan Otley did a cover for me 14 years ago for the original Critter, and so since back in the day we weren't doing foils and metals and stuff, we do what we call retro foils now. So whenever we have kind of a celebration moment of some of our books, we go back into the old days and we look at some of the cool stuff that never really got to have that fancy time, and so we do a very limited day one retro foil. So we did Ryan Otley retro foil from his cover for issue number 1. Ryan Otley, of course, was the guy who did Invincible with Robert Kirkman for so long. And then he went over to Marvel and was doing Amazing Spider-Man and stuff. So 14 years ago, he did a cover for us, and we decided we wanted to celebrate him along with Critter. And so we did a day one, first 12 hours Ryan Otley cover.
And I'm sure you have an idea how many were printed, but it can't be a hell of a lot.
Usually when we do them, they land in the 20 to 30 realm. Yeah. That's sort of the standard.
So obviously then I'm not really selling that because you can't buy it anymore. I'm sorry, everybody. Sucks to be you if you missed it. But yeah, so that's also there. And then you got a bunch of other stuff. And then I do want to dive into the trade paperback stuff, obviously the action figure, some metal cards. I think there's also the digital version of everything as well.
Sure.
Because some people are just international, or some people say, look, I have nowhere to put my shit. And that becomes a problem if you've been into comics for 30 years and you're not moving anything. And we
don't sell a ton of digital. It's just our fans want books, man. But it is available there for you, especially if you're overseas. We got you covered. It's not a problem. We'll happily give you digital books. But our experience is our fans want books.
Because what is this like? Because obviously people are coming now for a store saying, we are fascinated by X, and we are not necessarily comic collectors. We're comic readers. And this is a complicated, I wouldn't say a debate, but it's always a discussion. Are collectors good for the industry? Do you want readers? What do you want exactly? Do you want
both? You need both. It's a requirement to have both. Because right now, the industry over the last 5 years for sure is being supported by art, and without all the variant covers and whether it's in-house Marvel and DC variants or the retail versions, whatever, without all that, comics are dead because they are not going to sell enough units to have Discovery and Disney give a damn about continuing to publish this stuff. It's just too much of a headache. So you need to have the art collectors as part of your buying habits, but the people buying the art even understand that you have to have a connection to the characters as well. Right. So it's not just a matter of we can pump out anything we want with any character and people will buy it. If people have no connection to the character, nobody cares anymore. So the story has to have some aspect of continuity to it, so that the people that want to read it can read it and the people that want to collect it can collect it. But we are reaching a point where a character like Batman, for example, I mean, dude's been around for like 75 years. Like, is there a story you can tell with Batman anymore that we haven't really seen already? So we're running into this weird sort of like, we all understand Batman so well now that he's omnipotent. It's in the air. So if Batman comics were to go away tomorrow, most people wouldn't even notice. They'd be like, I didn't even know Batman was a comic anymore. Like, I know the movies and I know the cartoons and there's toys and all this. So some of these characters have reached sort of, to me, a saturation point where it doesn't matter what the story is. It's just, that's an Art Germ cover and I want it. That's an Arthur Adams cover and I want it. That's a Todd McFarlane cover and I want it. Because they like the art. They just like the art. They like Batman in a cool pose doing a thing. So saturation point is something that doesn't get talked about much.
It's interesting. People give me shit for this, right? And I'm going to mention something, and I love him. And you may or may not love what I'm going to mention, but I love Roman Reigns. And I think one of the best things.
The most boring, unimaginative.
No. Hear me out, though.
No, there's nothing to hear. He is shit.
You're not going to even let me say it.
I'm not even going to let you say it. He is shit. Now, I understand why he's there, and I understand why people like him, particularly because of the whole cancer thing that he had. No, there's no point. I'm telling you, Andrew, there's no point. I understand why they all loved him, because the cancer thing, he had to go and come back. And that's the point I'm making. Yeah, that's a fantastic thing. And it's great that he got to do that. But this, not just Roman, but the entire bloodline thing for this long is the most monumentally dull thing I have seen in sports entertainment in forever.
Forever. So let me make my point.
Okay.
My point is that if Roman was there every single week in the main event, it will get stagnant. It got to the point with John Cena when he was undefeated for like 900 days and
this guy doesn't wrestle. That's stagnant. Stagnant is I'm going to wrestle once every 3 months.
My point is that I like the fact that he's not on SmackDown, and when he's there, at least the champion's there and it means something. It was like with Brock Lesnar. Like Brock Lesnar would only show up for a championship fight.
Sure,
and then
but that's Roman Reigns too. It's like he doesn't fight, and we know why, right? He's not healthy because of his leukemia and all that kind of crap. He's not healthy, but to just be stringing this along for all this time, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And then when he does win, it's always because he got helped by somebody. Like, it's just the worst ever. The worst ever. It needs to stop. Not that I care, because it's fucking wrestling and I don't watch that anymore. But when I remember when Cody, I got kind of more involved when Cody came back, and there was they did the WrestleMania thing, and I was like, oh, this would be a great story. This would be a cool thing. Give it to a Rhodes, because a Rhodes has never been WWE champion. Like, that's a cool story. Even if it were to bump and like go to SummerSlam or something, like, okay, I'm down there. But then just nothing happened. And we're like, yeah, never mind. We're gonna just let them have the title.
I think they dropped the ball. I think that you should have had Sammy versus Roman at WrestleMania, and I think that would have been interesting. I think you should have had Cody go over Roman.
Well, there's tons of ways to do Roman stripped of the belt, but instead we just get.
My point is that about saturation is that there gets a point where, and the reason why I bring up wrestling is that you could have a wrestler that's just there constantly, and then when you bench that wrestler and that wrestler is gone for 6 months and they come back, guess what? Everybody got a break from that person. They forgot, or they didn't forget, but they had a cooling off period, and then that wrestler is relevant again. I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Of course. Yeah, that happens all the time. That's what needed to happen with Roman. But he just stands around and goes, acknowledge me. Like, no, I'm not interested. I don't care one iota for you or the bloodline. Zero.
The only thing I cared about was when LA Knight was facing him.
Oh, God, what a hack. That guy's a hack, too. Holy crap. What a fucking just, hey, let me take every piece from every other wrestler that was ever popular and become that. That'll be who I am, is everybody else. What a waste. I mean, oh my God. At least that dude one time tried to be different, telling me he had a sword made out of a dragon's tooth. Like, that's a dipshit story, but like, at least that was kind of funny, and you know, he was trying to do something. But LA Knight is just a joke. Again, I know why he's popular. I get it. But it's, I find Orange Cassidy far more interesting than LA Knight or Roman Reigns. Like, it's not even close.
Oh my God, Orange Cassidy is a saint. That guy is like the nicest human being, and he's so cool. And like in person, he's just amazing. Like, I've seen him on the Indies. Oh my God,
great.
My favorite thing.
I mean, I don't watch wrestling a lot, but when I do, if he's on, I'll be like, all right, what's this guy gonna do? Let me show me what you got tonight, Orange Cassidy.
But, I thought him and Chris Jericho, when he dumped orange juice all over Chris Jericho's white suit, I thought that was one of the funniest things ever. because he's Orange Cassidy and it's orange. Oh, the whole gimmick of that is just he's amazing. They don't know how to use Orange Cassidy, right? AEW.
Nobody does. How do you? The guy's got this bizarre gimmick, man. It's really hard to figure out how the hell to work with that guy. But he's fun when he's on screen. So, that's it.
But my point is that we talk about saturation. Getting back to that, I do think there is a problem of that, and I think that a bunch of characters, like I have been a big proponent that maybe Batman needs to sit out from DC in a comic.
Oh, he can't. But that's the problem. If DC Comics were to sit Batman, DC Comics doesn't exist anymore. I mean, Batman is DC Comics for the most part. I mean, that is all they have. And that's why there's so much, right? It's like, how much Batman can we sell? Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. And I get it. Again, I get it. I understand people like Batman. It was like Wolverine. Wolverine for a while was in everybody else's book. It's like they can't get enough Wolverine, Same with Deadpool. Let's just put Deadpool everywhere. Like, oh my God. So yeah, you do reach these saturation points where the readers might bow out, but that doesn't mean that they're not still collecting. They're just collecting for a different reason. And that's kind of a discussion that's not really been brought up, right? It's like, well, I don't read Batman anymore, but I like all of these covers that they put out for Batman because I like the Batman character. So I think there's a discussion to be had there about what is going on and why no one really, I mean, obviously there are people that review comics and talk about comic stories and so on, but I don't know that it really matters anymore what the Batman story is, the Superman story is. Like, they just are so iconic and so completely leveled up that it doesn't matter what the story is.
Let me ask this. What was the last Superman story that made you stop and think and said, this is interesting and I would like to see more of this?
Death of Superman was the last Superman story I read. Death of Superman.
So
now I did like what came out of that. The only thing that came out of that I liked was Connor Kent, Superboy. That incarnation of Superboy is the best ever. I don't know what the hell they're doing with him now, but in the 90s, Connor Kent with the jacket, the Metropolis kid, that was a cool super guy comic book. But other than that, I never read Superman after.
So I have two. Superman Red Sun.
Oh, I'm wrong. I do have something, but go ahead.
Superman Red Sun is if Superman landed in Russia and became Superman of Russia and is upholding his values of and basically his truth, justice, and the Russian way, right? The American way. And that's a really interesting book because it talks about communism. It talks about like Maoism, talks about dictatorship, and very political. I think it was Bendis who did that, and really great book, super smart, very iconic, and talks about a lot of freedom and truth and things of that nature. And what happens if his ship landed 6 hours one way or the other, right?
Yep.
And product of your environment to some degree.
Sure.
Person being raised in the heart of Kansas versus being raised in Moscow, Russia. Super interesting point, raises a lot of questions. And the other one was Action Number 9 by Grant Morrison. If Superman was the president of the United States. And now he's like, because it was fascinating, because what I liked about it is that nobody knew he was Superman. So now he's defusing a missile and then he has to run to a press conference, and it was a backup story. It was like 8 pages, and I just thought it was funny. And I thought it was clever.
See, that stuff, they used to do that stuff all the time in the 60s. They'd always have these like bizarre offshoot stories and so on. And they're fine. That's whatever. But the one that I remembered that I'd completely forgotten about was All-Star Superman. That was actually really great, particularly the first half of it where basically Superman was dying. It was a really interesting story, and Frank Quitely art. I like Frank Quitely a lot. So yeah, All-Star Superman was cool. And when it ended, it was kind of like, that's a shame. But I also feel like sometimes you need to finish something. It's gotta come to an end to kind of have value to it. Right. It's like, I think Ricky Gervais said that. It was like, he was asked like, what happens when you die? And he was like, well, I go into the ground and the worms eat me. Like that's it. That's the end of how things work. That's the way it's supposed to be. And he was like, that's the value of life, is that it ends. And so it makes you give every day, the power to be that day, because it might be the last one. And I was like, yeah, that's really smart. When something is eternal, like, we're just going to keep going with this character and there's no change, right? Like, it's not a matter of like, hey, Bruce Wayne is Batman, now Dick Grayson is Batman, now somebody else is Batman. Like, there's no evolution to it. It's just always eternal, the same thing. It's the same night for Batman over and over again. You reach a saturation point where it's like you can't tell a new story that way. Without going wild, like you just said, like, let's take him to Russia. But that's that's just sort of a what if story. They're fun, but that's never going to be continuity, right? It was like when Captain America became a Hydra guy. That was just a universe altering story with the cosmic cube and stuff. So it takes something really unique to, find something new with these characters. And so I think that's why most of the time we just end up with these weird sort of status quo stories. And most of them aren't even fun because they're all based in like world ending things, Infinity War and whatever. It's like, well, we don't know how to tell personable stories anymore. Everything has to be the end of the world is going to happen. So let's band the group together and, do whatever we're going to do. So sometimes those smaller stories that get completely overlooked are some of the best. Like you said, that weird what if story. So, I don't know what the answer is, but I think Marvel and DC have a problem in the comic book world because I don't think they know, like we talked about earlier with Critter, right? They don't have a plan. It's like they have a plan for a period, and then it's like, oh, that's over. Like, what do we do now? Oh, well, let's just give it to somebody else, and we'll let him do it. We'll let him do it. We'll let him do it. And then we just get these weird reboot retcon things where the artist or the writer that comes in from the previous book doesn't really necessarily acknowledge or honor everything that was over here. So they're just like, well, they just kind of Ryan Johnson it. Well, I don't like that, and I don't like that, and I don't like that. So we're just going to forget all that and do it my way. And you have no organic storytelling, and that's a big problem.
I mean, I was big into the Teen Titans that started in 2004. And, obviously you had a bunch of people. I think Jeff Johns was writing it for a while. I think he did maybe 36, 40 issues, 5 or 6 volumes, really good stuff. Then somebody else took it over. And then it slowly started becoming something else. And it was cool and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't great. At the end, when you got to volume 12, 13, 14, it started becoming problematic.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about what 14 volumes, 6 issues in a volume. You're looking at like 84 issues, give or take. And
here's the thing: long form storytelling is great. Long form storytelling is what superheroes are made for. But if you don't have consistency in the writing for that period of time, it can weeble and wobble all over the place. So that's got to be the key, right? It's like when Claremont was writing the X-Men, that writer's room was Chris Claremont's writing room. Even when it expanded out into some of the other writers that were doing other things, there was an X-Men writer's room for that stuff to make sure it was all making sense. Louise Simonson and all of that. So when you come in now, that stuff doesn't exist anymore, really. There's no X-Men writer's room. It's just, hey, we're going to give whoever the X-Men and let him do what he wants to do. And when it's done, I guess we'll figure out what's next versus, sort of a transition period of like, hey, this guy's going out, this guy's coming in. Let's see how we can mesh some ideas so that we get a nice organic transition. And then we're off to the races with the new guy. That stuff just doesn't exist. They just reboot the book.
Yeah, but we all know why. Because issue 1 sell and they're just trying to make money. And
that's where we come back to the collector part, right? This is why you have to have the collectors. Because if the collectors weren't buying all the number ones, then the number ones, instead of 100,000 units, would be 50,000 units to start. And then your attrition rate would start to fall off from that 50,000. So again, the collectors are there to give those pops, those boosts, And without them, man, it'll be really hard for any comic company to exist without those collectors. Less so for indies because there's not a lot of like speculation in indies, right? So even if the hyper collectors were to leave comics, mostly that would affect like Marvel, DC, maybe a little bit of Image and stuff. But all the indies who are just basically, we write for readers primarily. That's our bread and butter, is we want people to read what we're making. So I don't think that we would suffer quite that much because we have particularly guys that are doing it on their own, like a Brian Pulido or Dan Mendoza or something, because they've built their own fan base. So the fan base likes them, and they like the artists that they use, and they like the characters that they make. So there might be a little bit of a blip, from a collector exodus, but I don't think it would be that traumatic for small press guys.
But also, I think that also collectors come to Lady Death where they like that book, but they also want that limited 49.
Oh, there's
so
certainly there's certainly crossovers. There's certainly people that collect that read the book. I mean, without question. But there's
I enjoy Lady Death, and I collect Lady Death, and I read Lady Death. So I will buy a regular version, but then I want to buy one of those mystery envelopes because I like those like limited 49 books. Because to me, I want to know that I have a limited 49 book of Lady Death of a product I like. And I'm not looking to flip it. I'm just saying, cool, I have a really cool piece of art that 48 other people have, and I want to go find those 48 other people, and I want to like grab a beer with them and be like, that guy doesn't have that. And we'll chuckle.
That stuff, the collectors become a community. Readers don't really become a community. Readers just read, and they read. Maybe they do a review somewhere. That's possible. But collectors collect, and they talk about their collection. Hey, I got this book. I got this book. I got this book. Hey, look what I got. Look at the grade I got, whatever. There's a community in collecting. There's not as strong of a like sort of public chatty reader community, which is really interesting. Or if there is, I don't know where it is. I don't know where it's happening. Maybe it's happening on Discord because I don't know what the hell anybody does on Discord. But there's definitely an art community that freaks out about, look at what I got. Look at the cover. Look at this artist. More than, I read Batman #8 and White Rabbit did this and that. Like no one talks about like that. So it's a different, there's two different worlds that have a little bit of overlap.
Yeah, no. I have stuff in my CGC collection, my personal CGC collection. That's really cool stuff. And I love talking about it because people are like, dude, you have that book. That's an awesome book. And there's usually a story behind a book. Right. That's awesome. Or you got a sketch and then you got like a 9.8 on it. And so it's like, oh, dude, that's an awesome sketch. Like, what's the story behind it? And that's kind of what, I think collecting goes back to. At least that's how I feel. And, I stare at certain things. Like I have a Nichelle Nichols autograph on a comic book that's graded. It's a very cool piece that's hanging up, and I look at it every day. And when people see it, they're like, oh, I'm a Star Trek fan. And I remember that back in the day, and my parents used to watch it, and there you go. And it becomes
collections. Collections have stories, and the stories often have nothing to do with the stories of the books themselves. It's just the piece for whatever reason, whether it's a toy, whether it's a cover, whether whatever it is. But collections have stories, and that's why people like them. That's why people collect stuff, because they can talk about how they got it, where they got it, when they got it, why they got it. And then everybody else has that story as well for whatever they did. So yeah, that's the community. And it's the community that right now is keeping comics alive.
Yeah, no, I love my collection, and I don't disagree. And I do think it is a problem, but I don't think it's as big a problem as people think it is. I'm very optimistic where I think things will eventually stabilize. And I think
there's no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, you're going to continue to see destabilization for quite a while until, there's talk that Marvel and DC just won't, like we said earlier, they just won't do comics anymore. But the flip side to that coin is that there's no reason that they wouldn't just license stuff out. So in other words, they would say, well, we have Batman, we have the Batman family, and IDW would say, well, we'll publish Batman family comics. And DC would say, sure, give us $5 million and you can publish Batman
Right
comics.
now, I mean, the licensing has already started. Technically, Disney has licensed out parts of Disney to Dynamite because
Sure.
Dynamite's doing all the villains, and I love those books. Those books are
Well,
great.
Disney's been doing this forever. I mean, all of the Ducks used to
Right?
be published by Gladstone and all of that. So the licensing element has been there. It's just going to take somebody in the right position to be like, why aren't we just licensing Spider-Man to somebody? Why are we getting all this production out of our hair and let them do it? And then it's going to happen. To me, that's what I think is going to happen. I don't know the timeline because this is a kind of a tricky thing, but I think within the next decade, you are probably going to see the licensing of these characters. Even if they do keep making comics, I still think you'll see licensing to try and make extra money.
I think, and I said this before, and I know you're going to hit me for it, but I want you to hear my argument. I think DC and Marvel are some of the smartest companies in the world. Not because they're producing good stories. I think they produce shit stories right now. I think they just have a lot of IPs that can be used in a lot of different things like movies and video games. And
yeah, but that's not DC. That's Discovery.
That's Warner Bros. Discovery. That's Disney. But I consider, I guess, the ownership of DC Comics is by Warner Bros. Discovery. So, at a certain point, DC somehow, and so did Marvel, got all these rights to all this shit. And then they were bought by another bigger company that then merchandised the fuck out of that.
Sure.
And I think
that's why I'm saying if you stop Batman comics tomorrow, you don't stop merchandising Batman. It's just you're just not making comics.
Because the real money's in video games and movies. That's where the real money's in. It's not even in the t-shirt. It's in video games.
Spaceballs tells you all about it. Merchandising. It's always nice to have that original source material, right? In this case, the comics. But at this point, you've got 75 years of Batman comics stories that you can mine for all the movies and TV and cartoons and anything you want. You never have to make another Batman comic book again.
And then you could fuse them together and you could do whatever you want. You could take the best parts. And then guess what? Let's say you take 5 parts and it doesn't make sense. Guess what? You bring in a writer, you produce it, you make a comic book. You don't have to ever sell the book. And you spend 20 grand and make a 6-issue arc just to see how it would look. And there you go. If you really wanted to see how it would look in a comic. And I'm sure that's nothing in the bucket for Warner Bros. Discovery and DC. And so
it's going to be an interesting time between that and with indies, moving themselves to crowdfunding. It's going to be an interesting next decade.
And then let's talk about the other thing before I let you get out of here. And you're coming back to comic shops.
Yeah. Next month. Right? Next month.
So what is that like? Because
Antarctic Press is bringing Critter back to comic shops starting in February. It'll be coming out every 2 months. So February and then April and then so on and so on. So, I've known Ben Dunn for a while now through these types of shows. And he just was like, yeah, we've been doing this with these other guys. And if anyone wants to pitch their stuff. And I was like, I kind of had always been thinking about like, but do I need to go back into comic shops? I need to do this. I don't know, maybe. And then, next year's our 15-year anniversary. So I thought maybe that's the time to do it, is kind of come back in a big splash somehow. So, Ben and Antarctic Press were like, well, yeah, we'll print Critter. We'll do it every 2 months. And first issue comes out probably towards the end of February. And next issue 2 will be in the previews that's coming up. So every 2 months you'll be ordering and buying a new issue of Critter on the stores. So it's kind of cool. The response was really good from people like in the social media. They were like, oh my God, Critter, I remember that. So that was great. Like there are people that I don't even know who they are. They were like, dude, I remember buying Critter like 10 years ago. I'm like,
so
holy shit.
What is this like for you? Because obviously you have me coming in on Kickstarter and you have an audience on Kickstarter that you've cultivated and built. But then there's people that say, look, Kickstarter, what the fuck's Kickstarter? I don't know what Kickstarter is, or I don't trust Kickstarter, or I don't want to go and buy my comics in this new fashion. I like the old way, or I want to support local business. Because that's not saying you're not a local business, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Small business where it's like, great, I like Tom, but I've known my comics, I've been there for 15 years, and I want to give them my money. And how do I give them my money, but also buy your book? And now
Yeah.
this is because people want to do that and people want
Yeah.
to support their community. It's a
Sure.
very complicated thing, and people don't want comic book shops to fail, and
Yeah.
they want to buy your shit. So
I
what is
mean,
that?
the sales numbers were great. Because what this is basically a third printing of Critter, because we had the original, then we had it with Aspen, and now we're printing it again with Antarctic Press. The numbers are stupid good for a third printing of this book, and so that alone is really exciting. Is that the retailers were again like, yeah, give me this book again. So I'm enthusiastic about it. I think it's good to be in comic stores, to put eyeballs on your work. This will be now the third company that's produced Critter, so a third set of eyeballs. We had the Big Dog Ink fans, we had the Aspen fans, AP fans. So three sets of eyeballs are now on this character. That could be why we have this initial pop for Critter, which incidentally, as we've been talking, just rolled over 16K officially.
Do you also feel, because I sometimes feel that every month of comics sometimes is too much for a story, and it sounds weird when I say it that way, but I kind of like a story being broken up where I get a month off for a few reasons. A, it extends a story and it extends an arc, where now we're looking at a year versus 6 months. Also, you only have 22 issues, and I'm
27.
27, fine. But you get where I'm going with this,
Yeah.
where it's not a lot, where 27 issues is 2 years and 3 months. And you will burn through that really quickly if you were to go on every single one. I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but then what do you do when you get to 28, right? Or even if you got to 30, great, you got 30 months. But if you go every other month, it extends that out.
Yeah, it's just I don't think there's a right or wrong. I mean, you go monthly because you want the attention. You need the attention, like we talked about. Attention span is key. If you're not there on the rack, and people kind of, because most books are monthly. If you're not there on the rack, people might be like, oh, I guess it's not happening anymore. So unless they're really tuned in to understand it's every 2 months, it could be tricky. But we started every 2 months. When we started the company in 2010, everything we did came out every 2 months. And I think that there was some value in that, because when issue one, so we solicited issue one, 2 months later it came out, and then 2 months later issue two was there for order. So they got to see the sales for issue one, and they were like, oh shit, people are buying this. And then they got to do their orders for issue two while the sales were happening on one. And that really kept us from having any real attrition. We really never had any attrition on our books, very little. So there is value to it. But there is also the idea of being there again and again and again too. So, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but they wanted to do bi-monthly, and I was okay with that, especially since it's a reprint anyway. That's fine.
I just think it's interesting, and I actually kind of like it because I actually think giving space and also giving time, and also the other side of that is that, let's say, great, issue one, there's high orders, maybe it needs 6 weeks to sell versus 4 weeks, or maybe issue two needs an extra week, and so now you're giving a little bit more time for a shop to move it potentially,
Mhm.
and giving them time to adjust, and also saying, hey, look, and also the way I view it is that the book could come out when issue one comes out, and maybe it's, if you have those extra 4 weeks, you're in now a nice sweet spot where you're not competing against anything complicated or aggressive, and now have your little moment to shine with your book in a store.
Yeah, you never know how that's going to work, though. You never know when people are going to drop crazy shit in the diamond previews or whatever. So you can't ever. That's like people saying, "Well, I don't want to launch a book on Kickstarter when Brian Polito is there." I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything. His fans don't even know who you are. There's no crossover. You're not losing money because you're up against these guys. So, people either want what you have produced or they don't. And there's not a lot you can do about it beyond that.
Let me ask you this, because what I find, and I'm curious what you find, is that if somebody likes your product and likes somebody else's product, if they want both products, they will find a way how to get both products.
Generally speaking, yeah.
I mean, in most cases.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes in life, people have to make hard choices.
Yeah, they might buy one cover instead of two or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
But my understanding, because I've spent a bunch of money in certain months, and I'm like, I shouldn't have spent like $900 on Kickstarter stuff, but I wanted all this shit. And then the following 4 months, I didn't touch anything.
Mhm.
And even though there was some cool stuff out there, and people were like, Andrew, why didn't you back my book? Well, I'm like, this book, this book, and this book, and this book all came out during the same day. I'm sorry. And like,
Yeah.
I get your point.
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah, that I understand. I'm like, look, if you have your book and you have extras in 4 months from now, I'll buy from you
Mhm.
this book, but I don't have any capital anymore. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
happens.
that's normal. That's part of the game. Yeah.
I'm gonna be poor, and you're technically you and Preston's book are the only ones I'm backing in January. So I'm not backing anybody else's Kickstarter, and I'm probably not gonna back anybody else's in February.
No,
Uh,
you're gonna back Iron Butterfly in February. February 29th.
it
The
depends.
expansion of the Critterverse.
It depends. I'm gonna be so broke. Um, it honestly depends on my
You'll
friend.
only need like $20. It's a small campaign. You'll only need like $20. Just get the basic book. You'll be fine.
I mean, it's not gonna be a mystery box, right?
No, no, no. This will be a small campaign. Single issue. We'll have a couple of variants. But no, it's not gonna be a full scale thing like this. No.
Man, maybe again, it depends on my finances. It depends on what's going on because money is getting in and out of my
Turn the
business.
heat down, save $20, turn it back up. You'll be fine.
What I should really do is the comic book diet: buy more comics, less food.
That's also correct. That's correct. Yes.
I've
Yeah.
gained a lot of weight. It's not good.
Yeah.
But this is after this weekend because my birthday was yesterday.
Oh yeah.
And
Happy birthday. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm playing tabletop games and drinking magic potions with my friends this
Mhm.
weekend. So I spent $18 on beer. I figured that,
See, that could bought you a comic. That could have bought you my comic next month.
but I have to be a good host.
Right there. Like, stop eating avocado toast. Stop going to Starbucks.
Who eats
Yeah.
avocado toast?
I don't know. That's just the joke that goes around nowadays. Is, oh, these
I don't know
millennials,
what avocado
they don't
toast
have money because they keep eating avocado toast and drinking $10 Starbucks.
I'm giving up that too, not because I don't have $10 for Starbucks, but because it's freaking calories, and I gotta get like my body right, and I gotta get jacked. I want to look
Yeah,
like Chris Hemmingsworth. That guy's
you got to start intermittent fasting, dude.
that and less money on food and more money on comics.
Mhm.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be
Yep.
absolutely great.
Yep.
Um, but this is neither here nor there. I got a lot of problems, but anyway. Maybe it depends. How long is that campaign gonna go for?
A week. It's just a quickie.
Yeah, you're gonna raise what, like 12K on it in a week?
Oh, I don't know if we'll do that. It's we've done these little things before, and like we did Pillow Fight Day and stuff like that. They raise about 8,000, in a few days. So
That's crazy. That's just wild. If I could raise like 500, that'd be amazing in like a week. That'd be great. That'd be great.
well,
Like,
I mean, it's not like 8,000 is going in my pocket. It's printing and cost of the
yeah.
art, and it's not. It's you gotta make some money on these things to have any kind of real profit. So, we
So I have obviously Preston's a sponsor of this show. All the money that Preston pays me, it goes to keep my StreamYard active and live so that it gets me maybe 80% of the way there of cost. And then I find two or three more sponsors. And I'm lucky if I make $10 out of after every bill is paid, but I'm not losing money. Does that make sense?
sure, yeah, of course.
And so I think that's the key to Kickstarter is that the first
Well,
objective.
yeah, there's plenty of Kickstarter creators who can break even. And what I tell people all the time is like, look, it doesn't matter if you're making money on these things, especially when you start. What it is that you've made product and it's paid for. It's done. You've completed it. It's finished. You have a product. You can take it to Comic Cons. You can put it on eBay. You can make a web store. You can sell it on your next campaign and build your brand. It takes a while to get to a point where you make any sort of like legitimate profit on these things. And of course, that all depends on your budget and, you know, things that go into it. But, you know, as long as you are at minimum, it's paying for itself, you've created another issue 5, issue 6, issue 7. Just keep going.
It took me 8 years to get a sense of profitability in my interview world. 8 years, it was self-funded, but the expense on that for those 8 years was about $2,500 over 8 years. So it's not terrible as far as expenditure, because $2,500 divided by 8 is not terrible. It's not great. I'm not thrilled about it. But all things considering, hosting, website, equipment, all that shit. But again, you know, it was like what, like $300, $325 a year when it's all said and done. But it was also more expensive in the beginning. But now I am at a stage where I have sponsorships and it's paying for itself. But it took a while to get there. But in the process, I've built almost 700 interviews. So I absolutely agree that even if you're losing money, if you're losing $500 on your first, second, third book, I'm not thrilled that you're losing $500, but you created something. And if you've done it right, you should get your money back on issue 4, issue 5, issue 6, because now you have something that could be added on that you can print. And so it's a long game, I feel, more so than anything else.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's when that creator gets burned out and is belly up on issue 3 and they can't do issue 4 and they're exhausted and they're tapped out and done. That's when you lose all your money. But what do I know? I don't know anything. I don't know who this guy is. This guy over here. I don't know who this guy is. It's a little weird. That name, Space Between. I feel like there's something going on that's rather cheeky about his name. I got Talon's just quiet.
Well, I think we've said it all. I think we've done what we needed to do.
Yeah. So I should probably give you a chance to promote. I don't know where people could find you, bother you, promote the Kickstarter, check out what you're doing, all that fun stuff, everything in between. What you got going on? Where could people hit you up? Where could people buy your product? All that fun stuff.
So, I mean, pretty much we live on Facebook. So, you know, you can find me there. There's a Big Dog Inc. page you can join. Twitter and Instagram, BDI Comics, TikTok, BDI Comics. We have a Patreon, of course, patreon.com/Big Dog Inc. If you like to watch how the cake is made, you know, we do a lot of, you know, you get to watch the lines and the inks and the colors and everything kind of get built. There's bonuses and things. If you're a Patreon member and you're a backer of our campaigns, you get Patreon perks, things like that. So if that floats your boat, go check it out. But yeah, basically we've got Critter right now for 2 more weeks, little over 2 more weeks. We'll do Iron Butterfly, the mini story in February. April, Critter will be back with the next issue. May will be our annual Goth Day series. June will be our BDI 365, doing our special days in June. And then July will be BD 14. We're officially extending our anthology series out. We did a BD 13 last year for our 13-year anniversary. People liked it so much that we are going to continue it. So BD 14 will happen next year, 15 in 2025 for our 15-year anniversaries. And then we'll roll into the last half of the year with those plans. But yeah, that's where we're at. We just rolled over 16K while we were talking, officially rolled over 16K, $16,017 right now, 17 days to go.
It wasn't from me, I could tell you that.
What's that?
It wasn't from me. I could tell everybody that.
No, it was not from you. It was not from you.
I full disclosure, I did back your book. I backed that $320, I believe.
Somebody bought one of the toys, and then they bought the Clockwork Kitten variant, and they bought the Joan of Arc trade paperbacks. So yeah, it was kind of a nice little mixed bag of things. But yeah, we're officially over 16.
You should be like that person and copy them.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and remember, this is an important thing about Kickstarter. When you pledge, you do not get charged. right then. You only get charged at the end of the campaign, assuming it's successful. So like ours is going to end on the 28th or something, whatever that Sunday is. So when it ends at 11:45, that's when Kickstarter starts charging credit cards. So even if you were to pledge tonight, you're not getting charged.
Also, is it ending at night?
Yeah, 11:45 Eastern.
One of the things also about credit cards, and you should check with your credit card provider, and the reason why I know this is that after 5 o'clock, sometimes that charge appears in the next day.
Mhm.
And the reason why this is relevant is that depending on when your credit card cycle is, everybody, you might get this might be in your next cycle and not your current cycle, depending on where it is. And if you're like me, who manages money and manages money very well and backs appropriately, there's a really useful things like your campaign's actually ending in my cycle for February.
Mhm.
So all my money due this month that I put on my credit card is not going to be, your book is not on this cycle.
Right.
And that's something that's very important because it actually allows you to manage your money appropriately, especially when you're doing $300, $400, $500 pledges. It's a very important thing to understand how to manage that. So that's something to keep in everybody's back of your head too.
Yep.
So again, though, that's a different class, everybody. If you like that advice, I charge a lot of money for that. So you could hit me up, and I'm more than happy to teach the secrets of money. It's a master and it's an art and it's a skill. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not that hard to find, which is a great segue to promote me. I am Pop Anime Comics on Twitter. My DMs are open. Feel free to send me things in my DMs. I may or may regret that. I do appreciate certain things in my DMs on Twitter. Other things I do not appreciate, but they are open, so you are more than welcome to do that. I am not Blue verified, so it's all right. But you can follow me on Instagram too at Pop Anime Comics. You can follow me on Facebook, Pop Anime Comics. You could try to find me on Facebook. If you do, just say, hey, I found you, and I may or may not accept you. I have a TikTok, Pop Anime Comics. I have a YouTube, Pop Anime Comics. I have an eBay store, Pop Anime Comics Collectibles, guys. Collectibles is after the Pop Anime Comics, and I sell a lot of rare books and fun books, and I'm going to do something bad tomorrow. So, yeah, that'll be up on my eBay store in like a week. And I'll give everybody a heads up that I bought this print run out, all 15 of them. So I'm a bad boy. I'm boo-rific, if you will. It's shiny and it's a hollow foil. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. I can't wait. All 15 of them, guys. I own that. So if you want that book, you got to buy it from me. But that's everything I got. And on that note, I will give Tom the final word.
Oh, that's it. I appreciate the interview. It's always fun to hang out. Yeah, you guys come follow me. Come follow all of our artists. We always tag our artists, so you can go find out who they are and what they're up to. And we got 17 days left on the campaign. So come join the 205 backers as we wrap up week 1 tomorrow with the Brittany Ears art debut by Brian Peterson and Sanju Nivengood.
Well, I don't think I could have said that any better myself, everybody. And I believe that is a